thoughtful, think through all of the different second order effects as we have make sure that we are protecting the future by not doing things too fast, but going at the right speed for that acceleration.
I just think that part of the problem for adoption, once things like, the Genius Act has passed, so stable coins now are kind of legal tender, and you have more clarity about tokenization, et cetera, it's also kind of like abstract the technology out from the users, right? So if you remember, in the 80s or early 90s, when you had to connect to internet, you had to download a TCP/IP stack, and then you have to download the modem software, and then you have to click and then wait and then connect to internet.
What's up?
To be able to access the internet.
What's up?
Well for the early
What's going on?
And in crypto, we're kind of there.
Who's ready for some?
You have to download a wallet and
dump it up and don't you know? Dump it up.
Deal with the horrible UX for.
So I'll explain what's going on right now, fam. Welcome. Right this moment, there are 3 things that are gonna happen. One is already happening. Well, 2 are already happening. One is the price of XRP at 291, but Oscar Kramer is here to save the day. What does that mean? Oscar comes in expecting a dump, and what happens, everybody in the chat right now? Fast. What happens? The totally opposite. When Oscar Ramos expects to come and see a pump, a dump happens. Totally the reverse, so you're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and hopefully that's going to be the case, right? I want that to be the case. And we want to listen to the press secretary, right? But we also have Paul Atkins speaking in like 15 minutes. So which one do you want to hear? Paul Atkins or Caroline Levitt? Question in the chat, in the poll, as we get in.
Kind of the incumbent financial services banking side, or in the
Triple like, everybody. Consider subscribing to the channel. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Which one should we listen
infrastructure in this adoption
now?
The industry
want to listen to
it's growing every
White
day.
House,
we're talking about what makes it grow
press,
orders of magnitude more,
secretary,
and that all kind of happens together, and this wave is one of the.
Or you want to listen to Fed chair?
So
no, I'm sorry. What Fed chair? SEC chair.
Is it a registered charter, banking charter trust license?
Atkins.
Is that what it is?
A national trust bank from the OCC.
Right. And so, do you see that as and you're the third, sort of crypto-based or crypto-native company to really do?
Well, there's one
right.
now, and that's Anchorage.
You tell me,
and
we'll see what happens.
I was coming to you after this, Nathan, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Good friends. Thank you,
yes.
Walter.
Welcome.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess both of you then can comment on this. Do you see this as the start of a breaking down of the walls between TradFi and DeFi? Like this type of action?
I think breaking down the walls, that is a fair way to put it. I think that it really is going to advance the technology in the industry in a way that benefits kind of all.
Welcome to the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium 2025. Chair Atkins is speaking very soon, right now, very soon, right now. And also we have, as we always do, the White House press briefing coming in
we have
very soon too.
Businesses that are kind of natively built to serve that demand in the market. This allows.
And we have a delicious price of XRP right now at 292. Who is buying the dip? Who's buying the dip?
You have all of the big players that are incumbents.
Chipper, Ghost, TJ, I see you, fam. Welcome.
They have massive customer bases and brands, and they're going to innovate too. And
John 360 in the house too. Welcome.
We may have felt it in a different way because we didn't have an incumbent, successful business. But in some ways, they've even been held back more by the lack of regulatory clarity than us in the digital asset space.
Nathan, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I would just think of, I think it's telling that we have BNY here on the panel with us. BNY is probably the best example of adopting technology for the entire history of banking within America. And so
look at that blood on the streets. The blood on the streets, baby.
I think these two
Algorand.
Over time. TradFi,
Kronos in the house.
TradFi, we had,
look at CRO, baby.
Certificated stocks for many years, and then we moved them onto ledgers and got to faster settlement. And I think that we're going to see the same thing in digital assets. Another thing I think is going to be really interesting here, I think it's at least poetically beautiful to me that the OCC was actually established by Abraham Lincoln to figure out how to bring the dollar
Drop a like, guys. Subscribe to the channel. Alerts are on. Let everybody come here right now.
Act, the OCC has been given that charter again to decide what are the regulated stablecoins, how should the large, thoughtfully built stablecoins actually operate. And so there's echoes of the original reason.
So I think I need to change the thumbnail then.
In the late 1800s, they're now
Atkins
present
is winning.
in its expanded remit.
That's great. And I just want to point out that you've now had Oldsmobile and what happened with that, and now you've talked about Abraham Lincoln, so there's a high hurdle for all of your references
I'm going to be here all day.
historical.
I got more.
Let's see Carolyn Levitt. She's hotter.
That's right, the Rough
That's the
Riders.
reason to watch her, you think?
If we
Classic
could,
film.
I guess I'll just ask what your opinions are around the shift of stable
No,
coins,
keep
at
the
least as
thumbnail,
I've seen
wink.
them, or digital assets have been sort of side projects.
Oh, man.
They
Where's the
haven't really
blood
been
on the
core to
street juice?
strategy.
Guess what?
Stable coins in particular have been interesting
Got some
things that a number of
orange.
pioneers have sort of taken the lead on, but have not
Drinking
been
some
before.
carrot
Do you
juice.
see the strategic discussions shifting now where when you plan your strategy or where you see people talking in the market, is this CFOs now saying, I need to sort of plan stable assets and stable coins as I go forward?
Don't you buy the dips?
So, as like head of product from BlackRock and head of product at BNY, sometimes we think about like beautiful products, but actually no one's going to use them. And I think when we think about the evolution of stablecoin, it's one of those things. Like, how can you use it? And how can you actually take the structure of the fact that in many ways, if you break it down, you have a tokenized money manager of treasuries, someone's holding those treasuries. And as we talk about interoperability, ultimately you just have treasuries moving around if you're going from one stable to another, or actually treasuries are staying somewhere and you're moving. So it's very similar in many ways to other things that we have. But the question is, like, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to move money fast around the world? And there are so many amazing use cases for that. And the question is as you start to look at the pools of assets and these important use cases, whether or not you're a CFO or trying to manage your money from a company perspective, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if I had one account and didn't have to have revolvers
Revolvers. Something's going on with this stream right here. Not my internet. It's them.
all around the world to support my working capital? Experience
Going to be second. But really what they meant
company perspective, gosh, wouldn't it be nice if I had one account and didn't have to have revolvers all around the world to support my working capital? Experience of risk. So if you can reduce that time period, you're actually adding value. So capital efficiency, liquidity, speed, all of those things
Salt. Let me see if I can find them on X, because
can enable stablecoin to grow. So the coins out there, because again, it's
That's
about
them,
treasuries, it's about tokenization,
but they're not
and
streaming
inventory
it
management in a way
on
that's really
X.
smart to make this.
It's just you two. I mean, if you guys are going to be cutting, it's not my internet. It's them.
Good news. Number two, he wants the
Oh, look,
industry
this
to
guy was
succeed.
there.
Gensler wanted it to fail.
Our
So what
friend.
you'll have coming out of the SEC is clarity. We haven't had that, frankly, in 5 years.
About tokenization and it's about money
Great.
management in a way that's really smart to make the system work.
I think that, because you have to move two ledgers, right? You have to update the ledger that tracks the securities, the ownership of the security, let's say, or treasuries, right? You have to update the ledger that tracks the securities, the ownership of the security, let's say, or treasuries or a money market fund. But you also have to update the ledger that tracks the dollars that are the counterparty to the transaction, right? And then the fact that now we have this single ledger technology that uses the same underlying representation for dollars and securities is a huge advantage. And when I started doing tokenization, stablecoins didn't exist. Like USDC was launched in 2018, Tether was
Waiting for Levitt too.
the tokenized money market fund project at BlackRock, and then the advantage of that money market fund, tokenized treasury fund is that you also have stable coins as a counterparty to the fund to be able to invest and to be able to redeem the fund quickly, right? So one without the other are handicapped. And I think now that we have stable coins that are, legal, and we have also clarity towards about tokenization, the role of transfer agents and broker dealers for custody, etc., then I think that this is when the market will really expand.
Scaramucci.
Right. What about you, Nathan? You've called it, Anchorage has called stablecoins core plumbing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I was really looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely.
And Senator Scott, we actually connected last year in Wyoming. We did a podcast talking about crypto market and kind of evolution in U.S. U.S.'s place within that. And I was curious to get your perspective. I think 2025, we've seen remarkable progress,
Absolutely.
specifically in the Senate.
Yes.
And I'd love to hear from your perspective, what changed? And specifically Senate banking,
Yes.
you guys have such a broad mandate. So how did you prioritize digital assets?
I got to tell you, I mean, thank you to all of y'all for getting rid of Sherrod Brown. He's running again, by the way, but literally the industry put Bernie Moreno in the Senate, and he's on the banking committee. So really having the opportunity to have a team that's focusing on the industry, because we have passion for people who want to make a profit and help people. This industry does it better than anything I've seen.
Well, take a look and listen to this guy, Tim Scott.
Bless you. Only 3 times, though. That's it.
He's a good one. He's a good
I
one.
grew up, as you remember, last year we talked about a single mom in poverty, challenged, and this industry offers a woman like that more access to our resources at a lower cost point. Democratization is real because you are here. Focusing on that for me is focusing on my passion.
So welcome,
the reason
everybody.
why I'm in public service.
We're going to
So
be
this makes it
taking a look
easier
at
for me to
the
accomplish
White
the
House
goal
press
that I set out when I was
secretary
19
right
years
now,
old,
and
to
also
positively impact the lives
the
of
SEC
1 billion
chair.
people with hope and opportunity. Opportunity is opportunity financially. This industry brings that to life.
That's awesome. And I was remembering the conversation last year and talking about your passion on the financial inclusion side.
Yes.
So I'd love to talk about that in a second. One question before then, you mentioned Sherrod Brown. I believe there were 0 hearings on digital assets during his tenure.
Yes.
Now you've been leading the charge. How many have we had?
I can't even count them, to be honest with you. We've had so many hearings, markups, conversations. Just the other day, I had the administration over. We are working as a hand in a glove, because if we're going to make this happen, we have to make it happen right now. I think this is the most important time in American history for the evolution of this innovative opportunity. And so I continue to have hearing after hearing after hearing. And frankly, we're passing bills. We're not just listening and talking, we're actually getting things done.
I think I know what I'm going to do, you know?
Deserves, because it's what the American people
First time I
deserve.
do it.
Totally. Yeah, and we were talking about it a little bit backstage, but I think the contrast between 2024 and 2025 is quite remarkable in relation to the U.S.'s place within this space, right? Like at FalconX, we operate a global prime brokerage business. We have offices in the U.S., Europe, Asia, business in Latin America too. And for the first time in the history of this space, this has been the most interesting market and a market with the most favorable regulatory regime, or at least, evolving regulatory regime to really be able to invest locally
There you go.
and build that out. So thank you for all the work that you've done.
Weird, I know,
Well,
but I'm
last
trying
year when
something
we were
new.
doing our podcast, I gave a shout out to my nephew. I think
Just
my
for
nephew's
our
here somewhere.
own benefit, you
Little
guys.
Ben is what I call him. He's actually
community.
a rehab doctor at this point. But he went to Georgia Tech, and so back in 2013, he started talking about crypto and Bitcoin, and I hadn't a clue what he was talking about. It took me 10 years to figure out the words coming out of his mouth. He started investing then. I hope he's taking care of my Social Security, my retirement, by the way, back there. But he's the guy that kept talking to me, Uncle Timmy, you have to get serious about this, because folks like you on the banking committee, under Sherrod Brown, we were doing nothing, so I didn't see the reality of it. And then the last few years, because of Cynthia Lummis and her passion for the issue and the industry, we had conversation after conversation, and I decided then, let's create a vision for what this will look like by 2028, and then work my way back.
I appreciate it, Opulence.
I'd love to actually tap into
Guys,
that vision.
we have
side,
a few things
right?
happening at the
And
same
like you
time
mentioned, I know
right
you're
now.
focused on making the financial system work for more people.
Yes.
Right? And so if we think through that, I'd be curious, blank canvas, looking out over the next 50 years. Or you choose the time period, right? I know
all
that's a long time. But what does the American financial system look like to you? And what are those principles that you would want to bring to redesign that? And what role does digital assets play?
Awesome.
Should be focused on how do we.
Wait, what is he saying?
You guys, I have a dream.
Oh boy.
Would want to bring to redesign that? And what role does digital assets play?
Awesome. I have a dream. Okay. You guys, this is all the fun I get to have, so I'm gonna have it with y'all, okay? I'm gonna walk around if you don't mind a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I like to stand up. You know, if I had the ability to paint a broad brush of the future of our amazing financial markets, I would suggest, number one, competition is a really good thing.
We don't see you,
when
bro.
I think about competition, I think about the impediments to competition. Typically, competition does not happen when those who have a monopoly on our financial system, they walk in the door and they lock it behind them. And they find ways through a lot of forces, sometimes lobbyists, sometimes lawmakers, to create this whole intricate scheme, this web that prevents competition from seeing the light of day. When that happens, we all lose. And so, Austin, one of the things I'd like to do
Many
is
XRP
have more
holders be like,
competition by, I've said it several times, innovate
right,
before
fam.
you regulate. That's important
right.
because competition needs time to grow up. And if you're crawling, you need time to walk. And if you're walking, you need time to run. If you're running, you need time to drive and then fly. The only for all that to happen is to create an environment that has made America the greatest place to do business on the planet. It's this notion of capitalism, it's creative destruction. For that to actually happen, we need to empower people to want to take the risk. And to want to take the risk here means we have to attract more capital here. So number one, you got to have the rules of the road set. Number two, you have to have the players in place, not just in Congress, but in the administration. And I know you guys have Mickey Bowman in a little while, sometime today or tomorrow. What a fantastic person who understands the importance of democratization. She's been a local small business owner. Her family started a bank, a small community bank. I want someone who sees the world as it is, but also sees the world as it could be. And if I had the ability to paint that on a canvas, it starts with competition, it starts with good rules of the road, then you recruit the right people, the team, and then finally, you give people the chance to jump in, completely be miserable while they're failing, and get better. When I started my small businesses in the insurance industry and the real estate business, the one thing I had to do was learn that I wasn't that good at it until I got better at it, and then get better at it. And if we have that kind of environment, I think that happens. So for us to use this industry as a part of that broader vision, number one, consumer protection. Number two, national security. Number three is understanding the pathways forward for this industry, which is a part of the market structure legislation today, is that we take care of national security, we take care of consumer protection, but we also allow for innovation before overregulation.
It's coming in. It's coming in live soon.
Because see Cynthia
Already live on YouTube.
On the front row. We allow for the tests that allow for the asset to be defined, SEC, CFTC,
Yep.
and ancillary assets, because that's an important part of the engagement. So that allows for more resources to flow to our country that will allow that single mother like me to get more of her money faster.
Totally. First of all, love that vision. I think it's super compelling to hear that. Yep. And in
There
the
it
context
is.
of digital assets for a future set too, right? I think that's why so many people in this room are in this space and see an opportunity to fundamentally innovate within this market and expand financial access, both on the retail, institutional side, and globally. I'd love to dive into the market structure and Genius side with you, because I'm guessing a lot of people in the room want to hear about it. So Genius, you're able to get that through and onto President Trump's desk. In a divided DC with pretty broad bipartisan support at the end of the day.
Yes.
I'm curious how you plan on building on that momentum in relation to market structure.
Well, relationships are so important. My theory is, if it's good for the American people, it should be good enough for the banking committee. So I started there. I assume that there are people on both sides of the aisle who care enough about the American people, their constituents, to work together on issues that we have in common. When I sat down with Senator Alsobrooks, here's a person just elected to the United States Senate. She was a county commissioner, chairperson of her county commission. I was the chairman of my county council. So I look for common ground.
What's up, everybody? Welcome. Okay, so we got Chair Atkins, the SEC chair, coming in soon in about 15 minutes. And the press secretary is also coming very soon. We already got it. It's going to be weird, I know, but it's okay. We will be able to listen to one of them, and I'll let the other one play. And maybe there's not going to be captions, but it's okay. Price of XRP reaching 2.90 right now. What's happening that I have seen the last couple of hours is that big players are taking profits and selling. And as I was doing a bit of research, the reason could be because of the expectations that minutes happening tomorrow are not going to be as bullish as people think. Federal Reserve minutes are coming out tomorrow. And if they give us a hint that the chair is doubting cutting, well, definitely that's why people are selling. There's always inside information. There's always people who know before everybody. And this could be the reason why, or the reason some individuals already know what's to come tomorrow. Once we get the minutes tomorrow, things are going to change, right? So there's always dates to be watching for.
About this topic.
Is there's an even bigger set of institutions that are now coming in that want to work with the most regulated institutions they possibly can. Because absent that, they were never going to come in the first place at all. And it turns out that is almost like an iceberg in a sense. And the iceberg of conservative institutions that are now coming in, I think is going to be really one of the main stories of the next 24 months.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I want to go down to Carlos because of all the people. One of the things, I've known Carlos now for a long time. Carlos had hair when I met him, so a long time. And I've always been a big fan of securitizing. You've been particularly fearless in the RWA side of things with that lack of clarity. I wonder if you could just share a little bit about what kept you going amidst this lack of certainty and this great opportunity that you saw with RWAs and securitizing. Maybe walk through a little bit what that experience was like for everybody.
Look, we started in tokenization arguably way too early, and if I had to start again, the thing that I would have done is not start at that time and start like 5 years after, because as you know, when we started, I think everybody had the same vision that ultimately capital markets is about updating ledgers and moving things in ledgers, and blockchain is obviously a much superior ledger technology, and there is no question that this will be adopted at some point as the infrastructure of the future. The question has always been, when, not whether it was going to happen. And then we were way too early, and what kept us going was, I think, three things. First, we've always made incremental progress over the years, so you always see that things were slightly more happening, and then we got a transfer agent license first, and then a broker dealer, and then an ATS, and then all the things like that, and then we started working with KKR first, and then Hamilton Lane, and then BlackRock, and we've always made progress, and not as much progress as we've made in the last 18 months, but definitely things were moving alongside. So that's one thing, and the other thing is obviously that we've always had a core group of investors that really believe in the mission of what we were doing and continue supporting us over the years until now we're profitable. So now we don't have that kind of problem, but you have to have the financial support to keep going and building. As Walter and Nathan know, building a regulated entity is much more expensive than.
Right. But does the security it sounds like it. Yeah. Because it's not willing to talk about always will be up and somebody always what. He's always that position is strong.
Were you here when Trump was giving
All right. There's audio in 2. Good stuff.
It is now gone, and as Nathan was saying,
Come on, man. Like, I don't know what's going on with their connection. Not good. If it's gonna be cutting like this, then
this will allow very large, very conservative.
I think liquidity and other things, but the idea that you can just tokenize any real-world asset, it's a really important distinction. Like liquidity doesn't come just because you've tokenized. You can create an ETF of anything, and it doesn't mean that people are going to buy it or that there'll be liquidity in it. And I think that distinction is really important, and something that I very much appreciate that Carlos and team are very focused on. Because again, as a system here, what's important is that
some nice
all
dips,
work towards that
100%, buddy.
system. It's the flywheel of the system that will enable blockchain, digital, and stable coins and all these other pieces to actually fit together to have a faster capital markets and enable the access and democratization of those real world assets and funds.
With almost 1,000 votes, most people want to listen to Atkins. But you know what? We're watching the 2 of them. So we'll see what I do. But I want to listen to Levitt. I mean, I don't know, man. Out of the 2, maybe he will end. I mean, she usually takes like 30 minutes or so, 30, 35 minutes. And we'll go to Atkins.
I mean, that must be one way to answer.
Up Live fam, consider subscribing to the channel. Welcome. Links down below. Get your up to 10,000 welcome bonus on BTCC. Get a BIPcrypto.com account. For those who sign up with my link, I'll explain more in detail. Inside Project Crypto, a conversation with the SEC chair, Paul Atkins. Oh, that's him. Wow, that's fast. That's fast. Wait.
Oh, you really can't see anything.
Can you audio, please? Need some good audio. Alt.
Somebody can announce us? Isn't somebody gonna... No? Okay, hi everybody. Fireside chat we have with SEC Chairman Paul Atkins. So much to cover. It's going to be hard to cover it in this short period of time, but we'll see what we can do. I know he doesn't need an introduction, so welcome back, Mr. Chairman. This is your 3rd act here at the SEC, and we are so thrilled to have you back, much more so than the 3rd act of your predecessor. You know, I think the 1st act from him was enough, but we are so delighted to have yours here.
Thanks.
And so it's a new day at the SEC, and you've been saying that, and I just want everybody to be able to hear from you about what that means to you.
Well, it is a new day, and especially for this industry, I've been in and around it for a while, obviously, and so I feel your pain, and just some of the stories I've heard about the banking and other sorts of things. The lawfare that was being waged over the last few years is even more than I imagined. And so I think, obviously we've changed as far as our approach goes. We're no longer head in the sand, which has prevailed for a while, hoping maybe that crypto would go away. And then after that came the regulation through enforcement. And so we saw how that went. So now it's different.
Matthew,
now we're about
my volume is all
we
maxed.
want to embrace innovation.
It's
And
them.
historically, the SEC, frankly, has not shunned innovation. It might not have been at the vanguard of, kind of being the cheerleader for it, but it didn't stop it. And so going all the way back to like the 1960s, there was a big bull market there in the United States equities markets. And so there was so much trading, and they were dealing with paper certificates, which are pretty cool when you look at them, works of art. They're nice for the wall. But, the trouble was that, you had to process them.
I hope she asked about the
processing
ETFs.
ability and capability at the time. So the New York Stock Exchange and other exchanges had to close down.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to Levitt, and then after you finish, I'm gonna replay his
At least one
speech.
So the SEC was there and worked with the industry, and that's how DTCC
So it's not
came
pausing like
about,
that.
where securities were then digitized, and so they were globalized, the globalized securities, and immobilized that way, and then traded digitally. So that was a huge innovation. And other things through the years, the automatic trading systems, ETFs, all of those things SEC enabled through a creative use of rulemaking, of course prompted by people approaching the SEC and saying, what if, can we do it? And I remember my old boss, Richard Breeden, in the early 90s, the staff had been trying to think about ETFs, and when he said, well, because he had dumped the whole big file on my desk, say, figure out why this has taken years to not even get out of the agency. And so the staff was saying, well, we're not sure if the market wants it. And so Richard had the best retort, well, how do you think you're going to find out? And that is like, let's try it and see what happens. So things like that is what we're doing now with Project Crypto, and working with our counterparts at other financial regulatory agencies through the President's Working Group. So we're still meeting every week. We came out with a report a few weeks ago, which I encourage you all to read. It's relatively thick, but anyway, but it's, I think there are a lot of great ideas, and we're setting out at this.
Good to see all of you. What we've witnessed President Trump accomplish over the last few days has been nothing short of remarkable. We are now 3.5 years into the war between Russia and Ukraine, a brutal conflict that has claimed hundreds of thousands of Russian and Ukrainian lives and cost trillions of dollars. The weakness and incompetence of Joe Biden foolishly allowed the killing to start in the first place. Until President Trump returned to office in January, the bloody and broken Biden status quo was to endlessly force American taxpayers to fund Ukraine no matter the cost, no matter how long it takes, and no matter how many lives were lost. There is no denying that Biden's America Last foreign policy moved the world further away from peace. President Trump rejected that failed approach, and instead, over the last 7 months, has relentlessly pursued peace throughout his second term. And thanks to President Trump's efforts, we finally have movement after years of deadly gridlock. On Friday, as you all know, many of you were there, President Trump hosted Russian President Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska, for a bilateral meeting. This was the first time President Putin has been to the United States since 2015, and the first time he has met with an American president in years. President Putin publicly confirmed what President Trump has said all along. The war between Russia and Ukraine never would have started in the first place if President Trump were in office. This was always obvious to any person with a shred of common sense. Just look at what took place during the last 4 administrations. Under George W. Bush, Russia invaded Georgia. Under Barack Obama, Russia took Crimea. Under Joe Biden, Russia invaded Ukraine. But under President Trump, Russia did not invade nor take anything. President Trump is the only president this century, Republican or Democrat, who has held Russia in check and ensured peace in Europe. That's because Russia has always greatly respected President Trump and his peace through strength foreign policy approach. But overall, the bilateral talks in Alaska were very productive, and multiple key points were agreed to between the two leaders that truly opened up the door for Phase 2 discussions, which took place yesterday here at the White House, within 48 hours of that meeting in Anchorage, I may add. As you all know, there were many European leaders here, as well as Ukrainian President Zelensky. They all traveled here to meet with President Trump to maintain the momentum and work toward a lasting peace. Across the board, every leader credited President Trump for his decisive leadership that has reignited the dialogue in hopes of finally bringing this war to a peaceful conclusion. Two quotes in particular capture the progress that was made and the optimism moving forward. Finnish President Alexander Stubb said, "I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have had in the past 3.5 years. Again, that is the president of Finland, a country that shares a border with Russia. That's what we call the President Trump effect. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte also summed it up well. Without President Trump, this deadlock with Putin would not have been broken. He is the only one who could do this." Following the encouraging conversations yesterday, President Trump spoke with President Putin by phone, and he agreed to begin the next phase of the peace process, a meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky, which would be followed, if necessary, by a trilateral meeting between President Putin, President Zelensky, and President Trump. As the president said, Vice President Vance, Secretary Rubio, and Special Envoy Witkoff will continue to coordinate with Russia and Ukraine to make this happen as soon as possible. It's very important to remember that before President Trump's landslide victory last November, there was no end in sight to this bloodshed. Now, there may finally be light at the end of the tunnel and an opportunity for lasting peace. That's because President Trump is the peace president, and American leadership is back on the world stage. It should not be lost on anyone in this room that world leaders are coming right here to Washington, D.C. for help. While previous presidents have traveled halfway around the world to apologize for America, President Trump stands up for America, and he has firmly restored America's status as the undisputed leader of the free world. However, one thing that has absolutely not changed is the media's negative and downright false coverage of President Trump and his foreign policy accomplishments. From the beginning of this entire process, much of the left-wing media has been actively rooting against the President of the United States in the pursuit of peace. Initially, the media ridiculously claimed that President Trump was somehow beholden to Russia for even agreeing to have a face-to-face discussion with President Putin inside of the United States. The media said President Trump was making a grave mistake by, quote, legitimizing Putin. They were aghast that President Trump would treat another world leader like a world leader. The media relentlessly attacked President Trump and claimed he suffered a, quote, major defeat for not immediately emerging with a final agreement, even though he said heading into that meeting, this was a meeting to listen and to understand how to move the ball forward. All weekend following those historic U.S.-Russia bilateral talks, we listened to clueless pundits on television trying but failing to claim that the president had failed. The so-called experts in the foreign policy establishment, whose record is nothing but endless wars, trillions of wasted taxpayer dollars, and dead Americans, have the nerve to try and lecture President Trump, who has solved 7 global conflicts in 7 months, about peace. This is the same president, by the way, who brokered the Abraham Accords in his first term, on top of more than half a dozen other peace deals this year alone, as I just said. We also saw yesterday the president of Ukraine and all of the other major leaders of Europe fly across the Atlantic Ocean to meet President Trump at the White House because of the progress that was made, and that, if you ask the media, failed meeting, but it was not. It was highly productive and it was successful. This is why Americans' trust in the mass media is at a lowest point in more than 5 decades. Diplomacy is a delicate process, and instead of reporting the facts about what is happening here at this White House and what is happening between this president and other leaders around the world, many outlets in this room continue to try to actively undermine the president and sabotage the efforts towards peace. That is why I felt the need to set the record straight. In other news, on the home front, President Trump's efforts to make D.C. safe again are working. There have been a total of 465 arrests since the start of this operation on Thursday, August 7th. Last night, there were a total of 52 arrests, including the arrest of an illegal alien MS-13 gang member with convictions for DWI and drug possession. Thanks to President Trump's leadership and the outstanding work of both federal and local law enforcement, dangerous gang members like the one picked up last night will not be allowed on the streets of our nation's capital. Other arrests last night included assault with a deadly weapon for stabbing, parole violation for robbery, murder, outstanding warrant for attempted murder, assault on federal law enforcement officer, and felony assault. 4 more homeless encampments were also removed during yesterday's reporting period. To date, a total of 48 homeless encampments have been cleared in Washington, D.C. by multi-agency teams. MPD patrol units are actively working with city officials to locate and clear additional encampments and remove homeless residents off of Washington's streets. And despite fake narratives from the media, again, a significant number of the arrests have been in high crime areas of D.C. In fact, nearly half of all of the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in wards 7 and 8, the 2 wards that have the highest number of violent crime, as well as homicides and assaults with dangerous weapons last year. So while Democrats continue to coddle violent criminals, President Trump and this administration are focused on putting them behind bars and unapologetically standing up for the safety of law-abiding American citizens. And the White House will continue to provide all of you with the results of this operation in the days ahead. So with that, I will take your questions today. Here in our new media seat today, we have Jack Posobiec, who joined us in Anchorage, Alaska last week. Jack, thanks for being here. Why don't you kick us off?
Caroline, thanks so much. So a couple of questions regarding the status of these peace talks. Obviously, we saw the President and President Putin there in Anchorage. We saw the world leaders here yesterday with this summit. We've heard phrases like coalition of the willing. We've also heard Article 5-like guarantees. When it comes to the security guarantees, what is the current status of that? I know the President earlier today mentioned boots on the ground would be UK, France, Germany possibly, but unequivocally said no U.S. troops on the ground, but U.S. coordination. Can you elaborate on that, and what would the red lines be?
Sure. Well, you got to the heart of what I was going to say to all of you today on security guarantees, which is the President has definitively stated U.S. boots will not be on the ground in Ukraine, but we can certainly help in the coordination and perhaps provide other means of security guarantees to our European allies. The President understands security guarantees are crucially important to ensure a lasting peace, and he has directed his national security team to coordinate with our friends in Europe and also to continue to cooperate and discuss these matters with Ukraine and Russia as well.
Caroline, now have the Russians responded at all? I know we spoke with President Putin last night. What has been their response? Because we've heard some reports from the Kremlin and others saying they're unequivocally against NATO troops on the ground.
Well, look, the President continues to have these conversations with both leaders. Those conversations took place in Anchorage, Alaska, again yesterday with the Europeans and President Zelensky, and he has directed his team to come up with a framework for these security guarantees that can be acceptable to help ensure a lasting peace and end this war.
And then just last question real quick on this. Regarding some of the funding, we're hearing questions about another round of weapons sales or possibly a round of U.S. purchases of Ukrainian drones. Will that money be funded by the U.S. taxpayers? Are we finally going to see an end to the U.S. taxpayer-funded, seemingly endless mandate for these foreign wars?
Well, the President is very sensitive to the needs of the American taxpayer, and immediately upon entering office back in January, he made it very clear that we're not going to continue writing blank checks to fund a war very far away, which is why he came up with the very creative solution to have NATO purchase American weaponry, because it is the best in the world, and then to backfill the needs of the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people and their military. So that's the solution the President has came up with. We'll continue to see that forward. As for any additional sales, I'll have to defer you to the Department of Defense.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jack. Kelly.
What has President Trump learned that tells him that Vladimir Putin would be willing to make a deal for him, for President Trump?
Well, the President has learned a lot, which is part of the reason he opened up this dialogue. The previous administration, who oversaw the beginning of this war, refused to talk. And President Trump has always said, in order to learn, in order to move the ball forward with diplomacy and towards peace, you have to have open dialogue. And so that's why the President has had several conversations by phone and, of course, an in-person meeting meeting last Friday with President Putin. He also has talked to President Zelensky dozens of times, had him here at the White House yesterday, and he's understanding what both sides want, what both sides are going to have to give up. And he has always said, in order to get a good deal, both sides are going to have to walk away a little bit unhappy. So he continues to learn a lot throughout these conversations, which is why we've seen progress from both sides. And I would also just add, when it comes to learning and moving the ball forward, look at how both Russia and Ukraine have actually talked directly for the first time in many years, thanks to the efforts of this president and this administration.
Specifically for President Trump, though, what do you think Putin's motivation is to try to do something for President Trump, as opposed to just resolving the conflict?
I think, as I just spoke to in my opening remarks, Kelly, Russia and all countries around this world actually respect the United States again. And the president is using the might of American strength to demand that respect from our allies, our friends, our adversaries all around the world. And we've seen that not just lead to progress with Russia and Ukraine, but also we've seen it in the closing of 7 global conflicts around the world as well. We've seen it with the release of hostages in Gaza. You've seen it with the end of the conflict between India and Pakistan, which could have resulted in a nuclear war if we had not had a president who believed in the strength and the leverage that comes with the job of being the President of the United States of America. Rachel.
Thanks, Caroline. Heading into Alaska, a lot of the focus in the talk was on this trilateral meeting between these 3 leaders. Can you explain how this went from a trilateral meeting involving President Trump to now the focus being on this bilateral meeting without the president first?
Well, look, the president has spoken to both leaders about this, and both leaders have expressed a willingness to sit down with each other. And so our national security team will help both countries do that. Ultimately, the president has always said that there are areas of disagreement in this war that will have to be discussed and decided upon by these 2 countries. And so he wants these 2 countries to engage in direct diplomacy. He's said that from the very beginning, which is why he's agreeable to the idea of having President Zelensky and President Putin get together. And I understand accommodations for that meeting are underway. As soon as we hear more details, we'll be sure to let all of you know.
And just a quick follow-up. We know as of right now there is no ceasefire in place. We've seen Russia continue its attacks on Ukraine. What indications is the president getting from Putin that he wants to have this meeting with Zelensky soon?
Because he spoke to him directly yesterday.
And he expressed that
Haley,
sooner rather than later.
He spoke to that directly yesterday, and the president put that in his statement that he gave to all of you, the news media, knowing you'd be asking following that conversation in the effort of transparency. Haley.
Hey, thanks, Caroline. You made clear no U.S. boots on the ground. Is the president considering U.S. boots in the air as a form of a security guarantee?
Look, that was something the president mentioned on his interview this morning. It is an option and a possibility. I won't certainly rule out anything as far as military options that the president has at his disposal. I'll let him do that. I can tell you he's definitively ruled out boots on the ground. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. Just about the possible venue for the talks. Can you confirm that Putin suggested Moscow as a venue for the bilateral talks? And if so, doesn't that indicate that Putin is perhaps not serious about this, that he's suggesting a venue that there's no way that Zelensky is going to go to?
Look, I'm not going to litigate the private conversations between the president and President Putin, aside from what the president himself has already spoken on. But I can tell you there are many options that are being discussed by our national security team right now with both parties.
Can you give us an indication of where?
I just told you we'll provide you details as soon as we can. Thank you for trying, though. Libby.
Thank you, Caroline. I wanted to ask about the National Guard troops. How is the White House coordinating with how they're being placed in D.C., what areas? And then also, how long should people here in the district anticipate the National Guard to be on the ground patrolling the streets?
I don't have a timeline for you, Libby, but we will keep you posted on that. I think the president, as you know, and this administration, he came to this briefing room with members of his cabinet to lay out the rationale and the reasoning for federalizing the National Guard here in Washington, D.C., and for our work with the Metropolitan Police Department to make our district safer. We've seen violent crime has taken the lives of far too many residents here in our nation's capital. capital, and the president wants to make it safe again. And as for the coordination efforts, this interagency team is meeting and talking daily. In fact, there's a meeting taking place right now in the West Wing with members of the interagency task force to continue to discuss not just the National Guard deployment, but also how we can continue to remove public safety threats off of the streets of Washington, which, as the numbers I just showed you prove, they are doing every single night. I will just reiterate, 465 total arrests and counting since the start of this operation. I believe 11 or 12 days ago, I'll have to check the calendar, but those are pretty remarkable results. If not for this task force and their high level of coordination and the leadership of this president, there would have been 465 more violent criminals on the streets of this capital that you all live in every day. So I think we should all be very grateful for that. Stephen.
Thank you, Caroline. 3 questions about the DC crackdown.
Sure.
First, I was wondering if you could clarify something President Trump said. He mentioned getting rid of the slums where criminals live. Was he talking about tents or permanent residential buildings? And then the mayor has expressed an interest in clarifying how much of a focus illegal immigration enforcement is as part of this crackdown. Can you say anything about that?
Sure.
And third, any preview on the beautification?
3 questions. I'll try to answer all 3 of them pointedly for you. First, when it comes to what you said, and the president said, the slums of Washington, D.C., he's referring to the most dangerous communities, neighborhoods, and streets in this city where, unfortunately, violence has ravaged these communities and taken the lives of, again, far too many law-abiding D.C. residents. We know on July 5th of this year, just more than a month ago, a 3-year-old beautiful young girl was shot and killed in her car with her family in one of these communities, which is why there has been a surge, despite what many of you have been falsely reporting. And I believe it was the Washington Post who put out a map claiming it to be fact-based when it was just based on, I don't know, accounts that they've heard on the street, not actual statistics and data. So we went and reconfigured the numbers. And as I said, nearly half of all the non-illegal alien-related arrests have occurred in wards 7 and 8 in the District of Columbia, where we know, excuse me, there's the highest rate of crime. So we'll continue to do that. And what was your second question, Stephen?
Legal immigration, how much of a focus that is?
Yeah, look, I mean, the focus is to make D.C. safe and beautiful and to remove public safety threats and violent criminals from our streets. If federal law enforcement, with the help of the Metropolitan Police Department, come across illegal aliens, of course, we are going to abide by this administration's policy of law and order, and we are going to remove illegal criminals from our nation's capital. They will be detained and deported, just like they are in every other community across the country. Kristen.
First question is, whose idea was it to change the next steps from a trilateral to a bilateral meeting?
It was an idea that evolved in the course of the president's conversations with both President Putin, President Zelensky, and the European leaders yesterday. And as you saw, Kristen, with all of those European leaders leaving the White House, including the NATO Secretary General, they all agreed that this is a great first step. And it's a good thing that these 2 leaders are going to be sitting down together, and the president expects that to happen.
And how long is Trump willing to wait and operate in good faith for Putin to actually arrange a meeting before he intervenes?
Look, the president has put tremendous public pressure to bring this war to a close. He's taken actions, as you've seen, sanctions on India and other actions as well. He's made himself very clear that he wants to see this war end, and he has scoffed at the ideas of others that have been raised that we should wait another month before any meeting takes place. The president wants to move, and he wants to bring this war to an end as quickly as possible.
Just a clarification on something you said earlier about Putin agreeing to the meeting. The Kremlin seemed to indicate that Putin did not firmly agree to a bilateral. Did he agree to have a sit down with just Zelensky on the phone?
I can assure you that the United States government and the Trump administration is working with both Russia and Ukraine to make that bilateral happen as we speak. Sean.
Hey, if the point is to get everybody on the same page, why wouldn't Trump just take the call from Putin while the other leaders were in the room? He said it would be disrespectful to do that. But why is it disrespectful?
With all due respect, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that, Sean. The president met with all of these European leaders at the White House 48 hours after sitting down with President Putin on American soil. In fact, there was so much progress in the readout that was given to these European leaders immediately following his meeting with President Putin that every single one of them got on a plane plane 48 hours later and flew to the United States of America. And if I could just read for all of you some of the statements from those European leaders yesterday, you had President Zelensky himself saying it was a very good conversation. It was really good. We spoke about very sensitive points. The Secretary General, Mark Rutte, it was the president, only because of the president, that this deadlock was broken, but with President Putin by starting a dialogue. So these leaders, who this war is in their backyard, are very grateful that the president took that call and that he was there to provide them with a readout of Russia's thinking on this, something that was not done by the previous administration at all. Catherine.
Thank you. Is the White House looking at Budapest as a possible location?
I'm not going to confirm or deny locations. We'll provide you with details as soon as we can.
Just following up on Kristen's question, I understand that the White House is working and allies are working to make this meeting happen, but did Putin promise to do a meeting with Zelensky, a direct meeting, in the coming weeks?
He has, and I just answered that question for you. Franco.
Thanks. I just want to clarify. So you are saying that President Trump is considering U.S. pilots and U.S. aircraft potentially supporting European or Ukrainian forces?
The president spoke to that himself this morning when he called into Fox and Friends, and I would defer you to his answer. You can read it directly yourself.
In addition, can I ask, no boots on the ground, Steve Witkoff's talking about Article 5-like security guarantees. Can you talk about what other Article 5-like security guarantees that are being considered if it's not boots on the ground?
These are very sensitive diplomatic discussions that are currently taking place literally as we speak. So I will leave it to the national security team, and I'll leave it to the president to have those private discussions with these leaders as we try to bring this war to an end.
And can I ask one
Mary
more?
Margaret, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. Two questions, if that's okay. So on these meetings, I know you said that the trilateral will take place if necessary. Do you think that we might not need the trilateral and that Zelensky and Putin might come to this conclusion on their own? And then as a follow-up, I know the president said on Fox News this morning that he's partially seeking peace in order to get to heaven. Was he joking, or is there spiritual motivation behind his peace deals here?
I think the president was serious. I think the president wants to get to heaven, as I hope we all do in this room as well. Annie.
Thanks, Caroline. I'm just shifting gears to the Department of Justice for a minute. Can you walk us through why another deputy FBI director was named? Does Trump have any displeasure with how the FBI has been being run to date? And then I have a question about the antitrust division.
No, Andrew Bailey is extremely qualified. As you know, he's been serving with honor as the Attorney General of Missouri, and he's been brought on as another set of very credible and experienced hands to work alongside the current Deputy Director, Dan Bongino, under the leadership of the Director, Kash Patel, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And the FBI has been doing a tremendous job. We've seen their agents out on the streets as part of this interagency task force here in Washington. But the crime that they've been stopping here in Washington, they've been doing this for 7 months all across the country. In fact, there's been 19,000 arrests by the FBI nationwide. That's more than double last year in the same time period. Of those, 1,600 arrests were for violent crimes against children. 4,000 child victims have been rescued by this FBI under this current leadership. 1,000 arrests from investigations of foreign terrorist organizations. There's been 1,500 kilos of fentanyl seized. 6,300 kilos of meth have been seized, and 3 of the top 10 most wanted have been arrested so far. Not a single one of the individuals on the top 10 most wanted list were arrested under the previous administration. We've arrested 3 in 7 months. So when you're actually working and enforcing law and order, you need all hands on deck. And so we look forward to welcoming Andrew Bailey to this new post. Jackie.
I have a quick question about Roger Alfred, who's a former DOJ official. He gave a speech in Aspen yesterday where he said that senior DOJ aides are cutting deals with favored lobbyists. I'm wondering if the president has any concerns at all with the way the antitrust division is working.
I have no idea who that individual is. I don't know why he made those comments. I don't know what basis he's making those comments on. My instinct tells me it's not true, but we will definitely look into them and I'll get you a response.
Thank you, Caroline.
Jackie.
Thanks, Caroline. Since the president often says that this war would not have started if he were in office, and Putin confirmed that.
It's true. Do you accept that as true? The European leaders do.
Well,
and President Putin himself said that, by the way.
He did say that. The question I have, though, is what is the president going to do to ensure that these security guarantees last beyond him into the time when he is no longer president? And does that have to involve Congress at all?
Well, he understands the need for that, which he spoke to yesterday. And what's he going to do? It's why he's engaging in so many talks and so many conversations with both sides of this war with our European allies. It's why on the way home from Anchorage, Alaska, very late at night, when I know many of you on the press plane were sleeping and many staff were sleeping, the president himself was still awake at 2 o'clock in the morning talking to European leaders and NATO about how we can ensure a lasting peace and bring this conflict to an end. He has expended an incredible amount of time, energy, and effort into bringing this war to an end, and he remains determined to do that.
Also, can
Go
I ask
ahead.
you about the
Go ahead.
Thank you, Carolyn.
DC crime?
Sure, Jake, and then to your right.
All right. Thank you, Carolyn. Which of the half dozen peace deals that the president's pulled off would you say he's the most proud of? And then I have another question.
That's a good question, Jake. I'll leave that to the president to answer. I think he's proud of all of the peace deals that he's been able to achieve. You saw the president of Armenia and the head of Azerbaijan both at the White House just a couple of weeks ago. The president, I know, very much enjoyed spending time with them and helping to bring that conflict to an end. He very much enjoyed his time with leaders of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo in the Oval Office, talking to them about bringing that decades-long war to an end. India and Pakistan. He used trade in a very powerful way as leverage to bring that conflict to an end. So I know he's very proud of all of these achievements, and I know he's very honored to serve as the President of the United States and to restore peace around this world. Go ahead.
So you mentioned Armenia and Azerbaijan. That's a conflict that, I spent time in the Southern Caucasus covering that. And, a conflict of over 30 years, and he resolved it in just a couple of months. Mm-hmm. Are there other conflicts that the president's working on right now that are off the radar screen that we should be tracking?
In fact, there are many. The State Department is always working around the clock under the leadership of Secretary Rubio and keeping the president apprised of conflicts that are bubbling up all over the world. But of course, as you all know, as we've talked a lot about in this briefing, he's spending a lot of time right now on ending this war in Russia, Ukraine, and of course the conflict in Israel and Gaza, which he wants to see come to a close as well. Sure, go ahead.
So the president says that he's starting a movement to eliminate mail-in voting, but states administer elections, not federal authorities. So can you provide any more details about how the White House plans to eliminate that?
Mm-hmm. The White House continues to work on this, and when Congress comes back to Washington, I'm sure there will be many discussions with our friends on Capitol Hill and also our friends in state legislatures across the country to ensure that we're protecting the integrity of the vote for the American people. And I think Republicans generally and the president generally wants to make it easier for Americans to vote and harder for people to cheat in our elections. And it's quite mind-boggling that the Democrat Party could stand in opposition to common sense. He wants to ensure election integrity. There were great efforts that were made in 2024. I won't get ahead of myself for Hatch Act reasons to get ahead for the next election, but I can assure you this is a priority for the president. Go ahead.
If I could just follow up on your comments about Gaza.
Sure.
There was a ceasefire proposal put forward by both Qatar and Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Hamas accepted it on Monday. Israel has yet to officially weigh in. I'm wondering if the U.S. was at all involved in it, if it's supportive of it, and whether or not the president believes Israel should accept it.
I don't think it's a coincidence that Hamas accepted this proposal after the President of the United States posted a very strong statement about this conflict on Truth Social yesterday. I would refer you back to that statement. As for this proposal that Hamas has now accepted, the United States continues to discuss it, and I'll let the President weigh in on it definitively. You're welcome. Sure.
Caroline, can you describe the president's perspective on taking a stake in Intel in exchange for federal grants?
Mm-hmm.
And is this are we expecting to see the White House make similar arrangements with other semiconductor companies and manufacturing companies?
Well, the president, he's been very clear about the need to reshore manufacturing that's critical to our national and economic security. That is especially in regards to chips and semiconductors, which is why the president has initiated the Commerce Department to conduct a study on semiconductors, a Section 232 investigation, so we can ultimately implement tariffs. And it's why our export license requirements remain in place as well. As for this 10% government stake deal, the Department of Commerce continues to work on it. I know Secretary Lutnick is working on it and ironing out the details, but the president wants to put America's needs first, both from a national security and economic perspective. And it's a creative idea that has never been done before to ensure that we're both reshoring these critical supply chains while also gaining something of it for the American taxpayer. You're welcome. Emily.
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about the 3 U.S. warships that are being sent to Venezuela, and there's 4,000 Marines on board. Are you looking at possibility of boots on the ground there?
What I will say with respect to Venezuela, President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. In Maduro, it is the view of this administration, is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this cartel who has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into the country. And with that, I will leave you all, and we will see you later, if not tomorrow. And I look forward to taking more of your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Thank you.
All right, everybody, what's up? That was a long one.
All of that is yet to be determined, right? What we found so far in this market is that for the major players in tokenized, like real-world assets, for example.
These guys, I mean, come on, the audio, man. Like, help me out here.
Mechanism by representing.
Somebody can announce us? No? Okay, hi everybody. Fireside chat we have with SEC Chairman Paul Atkins. So much to cover. It's going to be hard to cover it in this short period of time, but we'll see what we can do. I know he doesn't need an introduction, so welcome back, Mr. Chairman. This is your third act here at the SEC, and we are so thrilled to have you back, much more so than the third act of your predecessor. You know, I think the first act from him was enough, but we are so delighted to have yours here.
Thanks.
And so it's a new day at the SEC, and you've been saying that, and I just want everybody to be able to hear from you about what that means to you.
Well, it is a new day, and especially for this industry, I've been in and around it for a while, obviously, and so I feel your pain, and just some of the stories that I've heard about debanking and other sorts of things. The lawfare that was being waged over the last few years is even more than I imagined. And so I think, obviously we've changed as far as our approach goes. We're no longer head in the sand, which has prevailed for a while, hoping maybe that crypto would go away. And then after that came the regulation through enforcement. And so we saw how that went. So now it's different. Now we're about innovation. We want to embrace innovation. And historically, the SEC, frankly, has not shunned innovation. It might not have been at the vanguard of, being the cheerleader for it, but it didn't stop it. And so going all the way back to the 1960s, there was a big bull market there in the United States equities markets. And so there was so much trading, and they were dealing with paper certificates, which are pretty cool when you look at them, works of art. They're nice for the wall. But the trouble was that you had to process them, and there was not the data processing ability and capability at the time. So the New York Stock Exchange and other exchanges had to close down at least one way. So the SEC was there and worked with the industry, and that's how DTCC came about, where securities were then digitized, and so they were globalized, the globalized securities, and immobilized that way, and then traded digitally. So that was a huge innovation. And other things through the years, the automatic trading systems, ETFs, all of those things SEC enabled through a creative use of rulemaking, of course prompted by people approaching the SEC and saying, what if, can we do it? And I remember my old boss, Richard Breeden, in the early 90s, the staff had been trying to think about ETFs, and when he said, well, because he had dumped the whole big file on my desk, say, figure out why this has taken, years to not even get out of the agency. And so the staff was saying, well, we're not sure if the market wants it. And so Richard had the best retort, well, how do you think you're going to find out? And that is like, let's try it and see what happens. So things like that is what we're doing now with Project Crypto and working with our counterparts at other financial regulatory agencies through the President's Working Group. So we're still meeting every week. We came out with a report a few weeks ago, which I encourage you all to read. It's relatively thick, but anyway, but it's, I think there are a lot of great ideas, and we're setting out at the SEC to implement them as soon as we can.
Yeah, it is a new day, right? And you guys have already made so much progress, Commissioner Peirce with the task force. And, one thing I think people don't understand is how OG you are, and that, he really is. And so like in 2015, I started in this in 2015, and I think you were in even before me. So he is very OG in the crypto space. And the traditional finance space too, which is so important to have both the TradFi, expertise and knowing the history and from you were a kid, going through computers and stuff, like first mover, always trying the first electronic products and everything this whole time. So I think it's, you can really see that in your leadership. And I don't know if everybody knows these things about, how, how tech forward you've been throughout your entire life and career.
Well, I still have an analog watch, but anyway, but that's okay. But no, there are, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of spring cleaning to do at the SEC, not just with forging new roads, with this industry, but on the traditional side, there's a lot of, like I said, spring cleaning to do. When we look at, say, the IPO markets, I've said before, I want to make IPOs great again. There's so much negativity around going to the public markets right now because of a lot of things, just the cost of it, the complexity of the regulatory scheme and disclosure, the litigation issues around corporate governance and the weaponization of some of that. So we need to clean up a lot of that and make it much more. We'll be setting out to do that and bring people on to help us achieve that.
Yeah, and with the launch of Project Crypto, I think that's a really great initiative in moving forward and doing all of these things. And I think, I was very thrilled to be in the room when you announced it in that speech. And I think there was a standing ovation around the world about, bringing our markets on chain. And can you help everybody kind of understand a little bit more about Project Crypto? Because there's so many really important parts of it that you've discussed about, is bringing it on chain and making the U.S. the crypto capital and, reshoring crypto offerings and how important just competition is, how important choice for market participants and even regulatory competition. So
yeah, there's a huge amount to do. And so the good thing is we have a president who has thrown down the gauntlet. I mean, he's not shrinking from this, and he understands the importance of it. He said it many times himself, even before he got into office here most recently. So, he wants to make America, the world running on American technology and make America, the crypto capital of the world. So that's a pretty, that's a pretty good goal, I think, and a challenging one. So we at the SEC, in our little patch, it's an important patch of it, need to be forward-thinking. And again, with this President's Working Group and David Sachs and Bo Hines, who are leading that, I think that's been, and Treasury that has taken the pen to it. I think that's great. Has written down a whole, we've forged a whole bunch of to-dos from that. And so we'll be, attacking that, and already are. So as we go on, there are a lot of questions to be answered. And so I'm, salute the work of the folks in Congress who have, passed the Genius Act, which was great. hallelujah. I mean, that really is a seminal step for the United States Congress and the government to now officially recognize at least one part. And so then there's a second bill that's come out of the House of Representatives called the Clarity Act, and you heard from Chairman Scott here earlier. He's a great guy. He has a really great committee that he's working with, the banking committee, and so I look for good things to come out of that. There's some things that we need to do in this whole thing, but part of it is to bring clarity to this industry. You've needed it so badly. You've paid enough in legal fees and whatnot, not just to fend off the government, but to try to figure out, what the crazy quilt of different opinions, court opinions, and statutes in the different jurisdictions. How do you kind of push forward in a legal business? And so,
just wanted to say, there's been a lot of listening. But ever since I went live, we stopped the dump. You're welcome. Oscar Kramer never fails. That's an hour and 14 minutes, everybody. I think it was good always to hear and listen to the White House, just to kind of keep track and keep tabs on what's going on with Putin. And it all seems like we're going to have a trilat, and that should be good. Russia, Ukraine, and the U.S. But first, they are going to have a conversation, and we'll hear, what's going on there. It's obviously going to help out. Tomorrow, we'll get the Fed minutes. So that should be good, and see why the price is dumping. Is it because they're already seeing ahead of the game? We'll keep an eye on that. Last, today, Project Crypto. The SEC is not giving up on us, right? So they're still trying and putting a bunch of work, and that's really nice. Going back to Watch a Guru, today, Wyoming becomes the first U.S. state to launch its own stable. That's great, guys. Really, really good news, and I'm just happy about it. That's it for me, everybody. I want to say thank you so much to, because I was in listening, Mansoor, and Darius P. If you guys are still here, thank you so much for your kind support. And everybody here, honestly, guys, I'm buying the XRP dip with over 1,700 votes. You're saying yes. We love that. Well, price of XRP is now the lowest at 289 in, let's go to the 4 hours. The last time we were at this level was the beginning of August. So it's about 2 weeks, 2+ weeks. That says a lot. Just to give you an idea, highest was 338. All right, right here. Very nice consolidation. Broke it. Now we came down. A few more levels to watch. But there you have it. For those who wanted to get some XRP, there it is. As we go ahead and go back to another pump. You guys take care. Thanks so much for coming in. Drop a like, subscribe. Thank you, TJ. And Sacred Terra, I see you, brother. And I saw Ghost and the rest. We'll keep an eye on this, guys. There's a lot to do. And I see you next time. Peace. That was good. Ciao. Thanks, Shipper and JV. I see you too.